All right, let's go ahead and get started. I'll pray for us. Father, I pray you help us today understand a new grammatical concept. I pray that it would be easy. I pray that it would help open our minds to the Scriptures. And we pray all this in Christ's name. Amen. So we're looking today at participles. And the easiest way to think of a participle is to think of it as the ing form of the verb. So if paint is your verb, what would the participle be? Painting. Do you realize, however, that painting is actually a verbal adjective? Now, tell me what an adjective is. Right. Adjective is a word that modifies a noun. So if you say the man, when you say the good man, good is the adjective. You with me?
Yes.
Okay. If I say the man painting the fence is my uncle, do you recognize that painting the fence is functioning as an adjective?
Yes. Because it's describing what the man's doing.
Right, it's modifying the man. The man painting the fence is my uncle.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, think of this sentence though. The man painting the fence falling down is my uncle. What is falling down modifying?
The man.
It's ambiguous in English. Is it the man or is it the fence?
I don't know. I would sentence.
It's either or at that point.
In English, it's unclear. In Greek, it's crystal clear because participles are verbal adjectives, which means that a participle can do anything a verb can do. It has an implied subject. It can have a direct object. It can have an indirect object. I, painting the fence for my mother, pleased her greatly, right? The for my mother modifies the participle painting. I, painting the fence, I guess the indirect object modifies the main. Long and short is anything an adjective can do, a participle can do. Anything a verb can do, a participle can do. So a participle is a verbal adjective. Now, in Greek, do adjectives have to agree with the word they modify in gender, number, and case?
Yes.
So that would mean participles have to agree with the words they modify in gender, number, and case. So luone is the word loosing, but it's only loosing for the masculine nominative singular. If it modified of a man, then it has to be the genitive. If it's men loosing, it has to be this ending. So what we have to do is we have to memorize these endings. And then secondly, understand this new grammatical function of a participle. So, what are the endings? Masculine endings are called third declension endings. We've learned first and second declension endings so far. This is a third declension, and it's the most important third declension. So we're going to have nouns that end like this, but we're going to memorize it as the participial ending, right? So the conjugation goes on, ontos, onti, onta, Tes, Anton, Usi, Antos.
I have a question. Why is it in parentheses?
So it's a removable new, and if the next word begins with a vowel, you'll have it, but if it doesn't begin with a vowel, you won't have it.
And would it be added at the end?
Added at the end, usin. And see, we've already had that in John 1. Tois pistusin, to the ones believing on his name. Right? Okay, the feminines are great because all the feminines are an inconsistent alpha. Usa, usais, usay, usan, usai, uson, usais, usas. We don't even have to memorize anything new there, do we? Maybe that oo goes with it, but otherwise it's inconsistent alpha, absolutely straightforward. And so the neuter is really all we have to work on. On, ontos, onti, on. Onta, onton, usin, onta. So that's how you say ing for any verb. You put these endings on it and it turns it into the ing form. And then that thing has become an adjective that can modify a noun. You with me?
So there are no exceptions to this one? That's always how participle works?
Always how participles work. Think of participle as a grammatical smoothie that you put in a Vitamix and you put in an adjective and you put in a verb and out comes a participle. It's a verbal participle. Anything a verb can do, a participle will do. Anything an adjective will do, a participle will do. It's a verbal adjective. Now, we don't have this in English, but they have it in Greek. Suppose you wanted to say a future participle. So with paint, the present participle is painting. What would a future participle be? So that's a future indicative. Still an indicative. How do you take the action of painting and make it future but keep it as a participle? Will be painting as an indicative. Being about to paint. Being about to paint, went to the hardware store. We don't have that in English, but they have it in Greek. How would you make a future participle? How would you think you would make a future participle in Greek based on what we've already learned? How do you make any future?
You put sigma in front of the other.
So if I wanted to turn this into a future participle, what's the only thing I would have to do? Put a sigma in front of it, and it's become a future participle.
In front of the ending? Or
in front of the ending. So ontos would be painting, santos would be being about to paint. I, being about to paint, went to the hardware store. What kind of I am I? I'm a being about to paint I, right? But can you see that that is a verbal adjective? It's an adjective modifying I, and it's functioning as a verb. And it can have a direct object. I, being about to paint the fence, went to the hardware store. I, being about to paint the fence for my mother, went to the hardware store. Anything a verb can have, a participle can have, because it is a verb, but anything an adjective will do, a participle will do because it's a verbal adjective. You with me? Okay, so a participle, because it's an adjective, a participle must agree with the word that it modifies in gender, in number, and in case. Just like an adjective. An adjective has to agree with the word it modifies in gender, number, and case. This is a verbal adjective, so participles have to agree with the words they modify in gender, number, and case. Now, here's the tricky part. When I gave this sentence, I, painting the fence falling down, looked foolish. In English, it's unclear whether I'm falling down or the fence is falling down. Would it be unclear in Greek? No, because it would have to agree with the word fence in gender, number, and case, not with I in gender, number, and case. Now, what makes that tricky is it doesn't depend on word order anymore. I can put it at the very first, very last, in the middle. As long as it agrees with the word it's modifying, I know that it's an adjective that goes back to that word. Because as an adjective, it has to agree in gender, number, and case.
What if there's multiple nouns that are like the same gender?
Then it's the closest one. It'll be the closest.
Word order does matter.
Yeah, in that.
That makes sense.
So what would you think the participle for Amy would be? Wouldn't it be cool if it were just the participial endings by themselves? Guess what they are? The participial endings by themselves.
You said the word me? Or
Amy, I am.
Okay.
So own is being, of a man being, to or for a man being, a man being, a woman being, of a woman being, to or for a woman being, a thing being, of a thing being, to or for. Straightforward, absolutely straightforward. Are you with me? Do you feel like you have a good grasp of what a participle is, or?
Have we seen a
Yes.
specific thing yet?
I thought this was today's homework, is it not?
Yeah, I mean, like, it was. But, like, have we seen it in the Little Greek Boy, or?
No.
I didn't think so.
We've seen the participial endings in John 1,
Okay.
but I don't think we've seen
Like, that specific.
that. Yeah, we
Okay,
haven't
that's
seen
what my
that.
question
Yeah.
was.
Good.
Steady.
Okay, so being about to. No, I'm so proud of you guys. I know I've pushed you very hard in this class, and you have done very well. So, okay. So this is the second aorist endings.
Can you explain what a pair is again?
Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's the right question to ask. So the aorist comes from the word orizo. And orizo comes from the Greek word oros, which means boundary. We know this word in theology because it's that dreadful word we never want to talk about. Predestination, right? Orizo means doing this, to boundary off. So predestination comes from pro orizo, to pre-boundary off.
Oh, interesting.
Okay. So what would orizo mean? This is an alpha privative. Okay. So it's saying you aren't doing that, right? What would it mean grammatically? Not boundaried off. What would it mean?
Continual?
Free range.
The continual would be the future. I mean, the present, would it not? Wouldn't it mean unspecified? Not specified? So what would the difference between an aorist participle and a present participle be? Or Jacob,
I was
take
going to ask, for it to mean not specified, does specified and boundary come from the same word then?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, a orizo, that's where we get aorist from. So aorist means not boundaried off. I think in English it would be not specified. So the present participle is I painting the fence. All right. Right, but what would the difference be? Because I want to show you something on the ledger. I think this will help you immensely understand something about the difference between a present and an aorist. Okay, so this is our familiar verb sheet. Is there a future imperative? Why isn't there a future imperative? Because by the nature, it's always you're commanding somebody to do something, so there's not. Yeah, you can't command someone to paint, right? I mean, so it never appears. There is no imperative in the imperfect either, because the imperfect is simply the continual, past continual. And once you get out of the indicatives, you don't have temporal augments anymore. So this would just be continual action. And you already have that in the present. Look at the aorist endings. Once you get out of the indicative, do any of them have the temporal augment? Which means that they have nothing, at that point, they have nothing to do with past tense time. Only type of action. I feel I've lost you. So, on a timeline, there are only three positions, right? Past, present, and future, right? Right?
My answer is supposedly.
Present, past, and future. right?
Yeah.
Okay. In Greek, you've got when something happens, you also have how it happened. Punctiliar, iterative, or durative. Right? I paint the house, I am painting the house, I continue to paint the house. Right? In the past, in Greek, you have 4 past tenses. The imperfect is that kind of action. Right? Continue or durative. I continue to paint the house. I paint my house every Saturday. It's just something I do. I go out and paint it over and over and over and over again.
By nature, wouldn't that be more present?
I was painting my house.
But like continually?
Yeah,
If
I
you
used
were to
to
paint
do
it.
this every week, basically.
Yeah, and I was describing, what have you done for the last 10 years? Well, every Thursday I painted my
Okay.
house. That's how you would say it.
Dedication.
If you reduced all of these 3 to a point and put it into a pass, that is, you aren't differentiating which one of these it is. That's what an aorist does. I painted my house, but I've told you nothing about how I actually did it.
So it's past tense anonymous.
Yeah, past tense, anonymous, aoristic, it's not specifying, it's not boundarying off which one of these it is. You with me?
So question.
So it's this reduced to just a generic point in time, right? So the difference between an aorist and an imperfect is the imperfect is actually specifying that's how it happened.
Okay.
If you look up aorist on Google, it gives a pretty good definition.
What does it give, Devin?
An unqualified past tense of a verb without reference to duration or completion of the action.
Ooh, say that again.
An unqualified past tense of a verb without reference to duration or completion of the action.
It's unspecified.
Is imperfect the only one that uses the word was?
Yes. Was blanking. That's how in English you get the continual nature of
Is
it.
it always was blanking? Like
Was
when say I
blanking.
was at the store, what would that be?
That would be an aorist.
There.
Unless you wanted to say every Thursday at 8:30 I was at the store, then you would use this because you're saying you were doing it over and over and over again.
What if you said I was at the store until 8:30? What would-
I was at the store until 8:30. I think you would use an aorist and then it's until that's modifying it, not the aorist. So the perfect, which we haven't learned yet, is past action with lasting consequences. I had paid off my mortgage, therefore I had no house payment. Right? Past action, lasting consequences. And a pluperfect is simply a perfect one step further back in the past. I had paid off my mortgage, and for 10 years I didn't have a house payment. And then I got another loan and bought a bigger house, right? So that the consequences in a pluperfect have stopped somewhere in the past. With me?
So using the, I guess, example of like continual verbs or verbs that happen continually that have happened in the past or that continue to happen in the present. how would that work with imperfect? Or do they not? Like, I paint my house every Thursday because that's something that you do also in the future. So would that not count for lasting consequences with imperfect?
So how you would translate it with paint is I was painting, I painted, I have painted, I had painted. So I was painting, was ing, I painted, I have painted, I had painted.
Okay.
With me?
Yes, and
It's okay, because this is really the hardest thing we have to learn the whole year, so we're almost there.
That's good.
I could use great.
So like after this, it kind of just like plateaus.
After this, the line gets broken.
Still hard. It's equally as hard.
So here's the deal. If the aorist participle doesn't have a temporal augment, what is it describing in terms of type of action? Okay, so the easy answer is just translate every aorist participle having blanked. He, having painted his house, put it on the market to sell. So the easy rule is just translate every aorist participle having blanked. The problem is that's not technically right. Technically, it's viewing the aorist action as a whole, which means usually that's completed action. And to do that in English, you're going to have to put it in the past tense, having blanked. But you can see it has no temporal augment. So it has nothing to do with past time. It's simply how you look at the action. Where that comes in place is in imperatives. So if I use paint, present active imperative, say paint the wall, use the aorist imperative, paint the wall. There's no difference in English with that, is there? In Greek, the present imperative implies that you're already doing it and you should continue. And the aorist is implying that you haven't started yet. So in English, when Jesus tells Mary Magdalene, "Don't touch me," is she touching him already or is she not touching him already?
Yes.
And in English, there's no way to tell. I believe in Greek it's a present imperative, which you would justly be able to translate, "Quit touching me." So is she touching him or not touching him? She is touching him. See, they can do that in Greek because they have the action sort, the type of action. We don't have that in English. And so we have to come up with other words to put with it. But they had a very cool grammatical distinction that we don't have. So, we need a rest, don't we?
Yes.
So the good news is that's the hardest thing there is in Greek. Once we go over this hill, it is an easy track to the top. This is the hardest thing the hardest day I think you'll ever have in Greek. I remember being 19 years old and sitting in a Greek class and this same discussion and thinking, oh, what in the world have I gotten into? But that's as hard as it gets.
Just think Greek people, they learned this without having to learn all the fun names for it.
Yeah, they just learned it.
Exposure.
We're so bad by English. We're so bad by English.
Say let's go to Greece.
What's that?
Let's go.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Let's go.
Let's go. Like, man.
Dr. Davis, you should lead a break for change degrees.
To Greece.
How
or to-
cool would that
That
come?
would be
That would be so
Well, if
cool.
it's on spring break.
I would
You
love
can
that.
tell us all the differences.
Oh, I passed the quiz out already, didn't
Yes, sir.
I? So, I have put the midterm on the
Yeah.
thing.
What did you
It's the actual one that we'll have, so
So
that's
that's the exact one.
that's the exact one we'll have.
Okay.
It is the exact one.
Solid. How many pages was it?
That's insane.
It's only 11.
It's only
That's not as bad as I
I was
had
expecting
or
more.
as I had thought. I thought it would be like 20.
All right, tell me, how many of you would be able to write the charts out if we took the test right now?
Right now.
all of
Right?
the
Not the midterm, just the one
charts.
today.
Oh,
For
today?
One chart, yeah.
Okay, that's good enough for me. Put your name on it. We'll just study.
Can I try the translation part?
You can try the translation, but I thought we would go over this in class if you wanted to.
Translation. I could do the translation for the most part. The chart is still a little bit off. I could get it close.
Why don't we study for the midterm and do our translations?
That's how it is.
I actually know about that.
Well, then what's the point of us studying
So what you want to do is print this out and start taking it.
Yeah.
When is this?
So it's a week from Friday. So we have 9 and 10. 9B will be Wednesday, 10A Friday, 10B Monday. And then we have a review on Wednesday and we'll take it on Friday,
So the midterm is just chapter
1 through 10. The bad news is it is a lot of information. And if you wait to study until it's going to be too, your brain will just shut down. So,
We're taking it this Friday?
No,
Next Friday. Okay.
so I'm going to put the Word document on too. And what I would tell you to do is take the PDF, take it, anything that you get right the first time, go into the Word document and delete it. All the vocabulary, and then take it again, see what you missed, the ones you get, and you know you get deleted in the Word document, print it out, keep taking it until you can get all of them right, and then take the PDF one again. And if you do that, you'll be in great shape by the time.
That makes sense. That makes studying a whole lot better.
Wow.
You're so.
I have had my share of bad tests, so I want to help you not have a bad test. So what does this say?
In the beginning.
In the beginning.
It's a word.
The word was with God.
The word was God. It was in the beginning with God. All things through him came to be. And without him came to be not one thing. Thou in him was life.
Was life.
And light shine in the darkness.
In the darkness,
In the darkness, it has not.
Good.
Came about him.
Man sent to
God.
God. They named him John. They named him John? They named him
Name to him John. It's a noun.
He came.
This one came for a witness.
Oh, this was in order that he might testify about the word
In order that all should believe. Rebecca?
I know it's that he should testify about the light. Why is it should?
Because this is actually an aorist subjunctive. This is your subjunctive ending. Subjunctive is would, I should. Optative is I might. In order that all should believe through him.
Okay.
Nice thing is, we're going to see so many of it, it will become second nature. It's overwhelming today. It won't be overwhelming in 2 weeks. That man was not the light.
But
About the light.
there is that he was
The light was the truth.
I think you have to say there was.
I think it was
We're adding the word there. And we're adding that because there's no subject, right? Otherwise it just says the true light was. I guess you could do it that way. The true light was, the light, the true one was. You could do it that way. That would be fair. Which is all men coming into the world.
Oh, my.
In the world.
He came into his own stuff, neuter, and the hoi idioi did not.
His own.
But to those
As many as received him, he gave to them the right
or authority to become children of God.
to become the techna theou.
we have a question about that one.
Okay?
Okay, because I know Techna and Theou, that's children, and that's God, and the word before that is the, let's say that.
Exousia.
That means right and authority, but which of the other two words like means which word specifically? Which one is?
Altois
right?
is to them.
Okay.
To them, dative plural. And Edokin is the aorist of didomi. Aorist of didomi.
Okay. That's
It's give. So what's the aorist of didomi? Wouldn't that be the pluperfect? So here's how you do it, right? He gives. He gave over and over and over. He was giving. He gave. He has given. He acted. Has had.
Oh my goodness.
Ed. He gave. He given. He was given. Right?
Man, this class makes me dizzy.
So then Nisai is the to become part of the sentence?
I mean, literally what it says, he gave them the authority to become the children of God. Which implies to me that somehow they weren't the children of God before they exercised that authority. And like, what would that even mean?
And even then, they must exercise that authority in order to.
I mean, were we the seed of Satan? And then we're transferred, and he gives us the right to become the children of God? See, you never ask that question in English, do you? Because we're already reading in chapter 5 by now, right? It's only when you have to slow down and actually look at what the words say. And here's our participle dative to the ones pistuoing. To the ones,
Who believe in his name?
okay, but can you keep it a participle? To the ones believing. Okay. Is it to the ones having believed, or is it to the ones believing?
Oh, it's present.
Which means it's this, right? Don't we teach people that belief is something you do when you're 6 years old and you walk down a camp and just put trust in that? The New Testament knows nothing of that. That's something we've invented. This is to those believing in His name.
Definitely feel like speaks about our culture. How we.
There's a place in John 2 where it says the people believed in Jesus, and then the next verse in English says He did not entrust Himself to them, but it's the same word in Greek. They believed Him, He didn't believe them. Like, whoa, what does that mean? I think in English we would do that. They believed, quote unquote, air quote, but He didn't believe them. But
Yeah, I think that goes back to the tenses though, as in like believe rather than they believe in Him.
yeah, who are but were begotten from God.
And the Word became flesh and in tabernacle.
Woo-hoo-hoo. And look at your kind Greek teacher
I'm sorry, what?
who cut out all the hard parts from tinted.
He's such a little Greek boy.
Oh, wow.
I'm a little Greek boy.
I'm a little Greek boy.
I live in the fields.
We're there in the fields. It's a certain part.
Can I tell you what a student did one time? Even all these, maybe it's a decade later, I can't believe he did it. He struggled with Greek.
He struggled.
But
The guy from the book?
I gave the final and the midterm out ahead of time. Final has 600 vocabulary words
Oh
on it.
my gosh.
Yes.
Or whatever it is, 400, whatever it is. And the guy, rather than studying Greek, decided to memorize in order 600 English words.
No.
Are you kidding me?
No.
How'd that work out?
And he did it
That's impressive. So
to about word 213.
that's
And then he forgot a word.
Oh, no!
And that went on until about 375, and he forgot a second word.
So he's yeah.
He had it.
So they got to the bottom, they're like two.
There were two off.
Oh, that is cringy.
I would be dead.
And I was certain that he had cheated. But he came in while I was, and he said, I didn't cheat, I just memorized. I couldn't do the Greek, so I memorized it in English. And I was so torn as a teacher because how hard was it to memorize 600? And he got it 98% right
If he would have just put like 1/4 of that word.
into doing this, like,
Yeah.
I don't know what grade he got.
That's impressive.
it is impressive. But the moral of that story is don't try to do that. Don't try to say, oh, I'll memorize 37, you know.
Did you pass?
Or at least if you
Did you pass the class?
skip that word.
I can't remember if I passed him or not.
That's why you memorize
Just tell them to come and try Greek too.
Okay, so what does this say?
Yeah, I don't know.
They're in the fields. There's a certain farmer.
Boss a lot. Farms and has a corn. So you ask. On the one hand, who am I? On the other hand, who is Soslas? I am surely telling you.
You guys are going to own this test. Okay.
I am Crosslaws, and surely Crosslaws has other children. And for I am also a child. And I have a brother and a brother. On the end. They call me Crosslaws. They call my brother. Therefore, we are the children of Crosslaws. Surely where did you go? Where?
There's a house.
There's a house. Okay, so do you...
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm stuck. I'm sorry. Lego Day. Is it I am surely telling you?
I am surely telling you.
It's not a participle. Is that just like
The
do I-
am.
Am I stuck on that?
Well, in English, we don't have a way to say a continual without using our participle.
Oh, okay.
So our tense is what's called a periphrastic tense, a walk around. We have a workaround way of doing what other languages do.
Okay, so
We're just being lazy.
I've learned that English is just a lazy version of other languages put together.
It's just dumbed down German. English is just dumbed down German. And we don't feel like that, do we? We feel like we are God's gift to the intellectual world in everything, and that may not quite be true.
Sorry, I got hung up on that.
No, you're good. So, was this a little fun to go over?
Yes.
Okay, so we've got 2 weeks. We've got 2 weeks between us and the final. So what you want to do is go through the ones you just get laughingly where you can just do it. Go into the Word document, eliminate those, and then reprint it out.
Basic. Until the parts become fun.
Yeah, the rest of it will become fun. It will. And then you'll walk in on that Friday and you'll have an immense test. Would you grant that this is a hard test, a hard class?
Oh, yeah.
You're going to walk into a class, have an immense test, and you're going to be happy because you are going to own it. It is going to be your test, right?
So, would it be helpful if we like scrambled everything and try to do it like out of the order?
It would, but I would wait on doing that until we review on the Wednesday, because I'm going to do that on Wednesday. We'll do them out of order.
All right, cool.
But we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, okay.
Okay? All right, so I'll see you then.
See ya.
Oh, okay, so we're out. Awesome.